one of the noteworthy observations that can be made regarding the phenomenon of new atheism, perhaps it represents the distinctive central attribute of this phenomenon, is the highly hostile language it employs toward religion, religious principles, and the matter of belief in God. To the extent that the phenomenon of new atheism has been characterized in some Western intellectual circles as atheistic militias. This is due to the extreme antagonistic style that characterizes this atheistic discourse, or as some observers of the phenomenon describe it, the days of courteous atheism have truly passed. As Scott Hahn and Benjamin Walker put it, the new atheists approach religion with a perspective that views it as a source of evils, disasters, and human follies. They consider it their duty to earnestly combat it using the available and possible means. This is why Richard Dawkins' famous documentary series was titled The Root of All Evil. Here, the term root refers to religion and faith. Similarly, Christopher Hitchens, in his renowned book, God is Not Great, God Forbid, May It Never Be, with a subtitle asking, How Religion Poisons Everything. In contrast to Dawkins, who expressed reservations about the title of his series, Hitchens displayed seriousness in choosing this subheading, seeing it as a true expression of his view on religion. In the book's introduction, which delves into Hitchens' deep-seated issue with religion and religious individuals, he writes, As I write these words, and as you read them, people of faith are planning your destruction, and mine, and the destruction of all the hard-won human attainments that I have touched upon. Religion poisons everything. He also says, There are certainly multiple ways to reveal that religion not only lacks moral sensibility but positively contributes to moral corruption. Such a description undoubtedly reveals a strong bias against religion, departing from even the slightest degrees of fairness and objectivity, even by secular materialistic standards. Indeed, the causes of the evils afflicting humanity are numerous and cannot be confined to specific acts or limited behaviors. On the other hand, why this terrible disregard for the good that religion has brought to people's lives? And from what reveals the lack of objectivity in the new atheist stance on such issues, some other atheists, who appear to be more objective and calmer in dealing with such matters, like Michael Shermer, for example, the famous atheist and editor-in-chief of Skeptic magazine, says after mentioning some of the evils committed in the name of religion. But why this terrible dismissal of the good that religion has brought to people's lives? Religion, like other socially rooted institutions and cultural influences, cannot be reduced to such clear-cut binaries, either good or evil. As a result of this extremely negative view of religion in the new atheist perspective, their stance becomes entirely clear regarding the religious position. Richard Dawkins, for instance, says bluntly, I hope, really hope, to see religion disappear completely. And Sam Harris says in one of his published dialogues in The Sun magazine, if I could have a magic wand, and I could eliminate either rape or religion, I wouldn't hesitate to get rid of religion. And it doesn't stop at this point in defining the stance on religious matters. Sam Harris, in his book, The End of Faith, as a liberal atheist, makes a statement of great significance and importance. He says, some propositions are so dangerous that it may even be ethical to kill people for believing them. It is not difficult to infer some of the characteristics of these propositions that Sam is talking about, especially since we have learned how religion poisons everything and is the root of all evil. There is no significant difference here between the various forms of religious extremism and its moderate forms in the view of the new atheists. All of them, though to varying degrees, represent a real problem. Gillen's slide says, moderates provide a strong foundation upon which extremists can rely. As for Dawkins, he dedicated a chapter in his book, The God Delusion, titled, How Religious Moderation Sustains Fanaticism. Sam Harris criticizes some religiously moderate scientists, whom he sees as making a religiously moderate mistake in their evaluation. It is time for scientists and thinkers to realize that the competition between faith and reason has a zero-sum outcome. There is no doubt about that. However, scientifically moderate figures like Francis Collins and Chris Miller cause lasting harm to our discourse due to the accommodation they have made with religious irrationality. When Francis Collins, the head of the Human Genome Project, was nominated to lead the U.S. National Institutes of Health, Sam Harris strongly criticized him, justifying his criticism by arguing that Collins's religious beliefs would negatively impact support for scientific research, and that he was disingenuous about the materialistic scientific view of existence. Jerry Coyne also launched an attack on Collins, describing him as embarrassing to the National Institutes of Health, scientists, and all thinking humans. Moreover, the fierce atheist P.Z. Myers goes further to say that Collins is a foolish person who believes in the idea of creation and is against the scientific theory. In another context, he referred to Collins as a clown. All of this criticism came despite Collins's significant scientific achievements, far surpassing his critics. Even his passionate defense of the theory of evolution and his criticism of the intelligent design movement. In addition to his consistently moderate and tolerant approach towards religion. However, all of this has not shielded him from the intensity of the attacks against him. This is because the issue is not with the style of religiosity or the level of compromises that one can make, but rather with religiosity itself, regardless of its nature. One can observe this in the famous documentary, Expelled, which reveals the exclusionary practices against dissenters from Darwin's theory in Western academic institutions. Additionally, the biologist Jerry Borgman wrote extensively on this topic, particularly in his book, Slaughter of the Dissidents, The Shocking Truth About Killing the Careers of Darwin Doubters. If Harris believes that merely believing that God knows your thoughts should be considered a form of mental illness, it is natural to understand the intense hostility towards various aspects and rituals of religion, from all religious believers, that can be expressed. Which can be summarized as follows. It's time for atheists to stop appeasing Christians and other religious people. As Victor Stenger says, this is the same kind of extreme hostility towards religion that appears in the nature of the language used by many figures of the new atheism, and their followers. Boldness, impudence, contempt, and arrogance are all characteristics that are strongly present in many new atheist discourses. It is not surprising that such practices are legitimized through the root, not just the principle of religious criticism, but also the legitimation of mockery and ridicule of religion and religiosity. This is what is theoretically emphasized and put into practice by the figures of new atheism, especially Christopher Hitchens, Lawrence Krauss, P.Z. Myers, and others. And it's enough to watch something from their lectures or see their expressions to understand what I'm talking about. The Somali apostate Ayon Hirsi Ali, a screenwriter for the film Submission, in which Islam and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, were heavily criticized, wrote an article on the principle of insulting religions titled The Right to Offend, in which she specifically attacked Prophet Muhammad and the religion of Islam in harsh language. She receives great acclaim from the figures of New Atheism, along with financial and moral support. Even Richard Dawkins himself roots for this principle, as he concluded one of his speeches at an atheist gathering by recommending the following to atheists. Mock them, ridicule them openly. Be careful not to fall into the common trap of being overly polite when talking about religion. Religion is not off the table, religion is not off limits for discussion. Religion makes specific claims about the universe which need to be substantiated and challenged. It should be challenged and ridiculed with disdain. So, there is no place for religion in today's world, and no place for the religious in the scientific community. There is no room for mere polite criticism, but rather, its mockery, derision, disdain, and contempt. Jerry Wolff, the invisible atheist who coined the term New Atheism, illustrates this hostile mindset through an amusing personal anecdote with his colleagues in the field of technology and natural sciences. He says, "I returned to Oxford, eager for debate, immediately attempting to apply Dawkins' appeal within a polite gathering. I inquire, who among here is an atheist? Typically, there is complete silence, with exchanged glances in the hope that someone else will respond. After a brief pause, someone finally answers, almost always a man, usually with a smile tinged with enthusiasm, saying somewhat joyfully, 'I am.' However, the following comment is telling. Another person turns to him and says, 'You should be too.' When asked why, the response is, 'Because you enjoy provoking people.'" That was the personal story he shared, illustrating the nature of this hostile language among the New Atheists, which they employ as a technique they believe to be beneficial, unaware that they are undermining themselves in the process. This is the mindset that dominates many atheists in their evangelistic campaign for atheism, the mindset of provocation. It has also seeped into many of their followers, taking control of their words and actions. They use such derogatory techniques to belittle religious matters and strip them of their sanctity. They have produced a substantial number of articles, blog posts, writings, videos, and films through which they express a high degree of criticism towards religions in a language that is notably derogatory, and with an aggressive style. And the internet is filled with such offensive content through their blogs, Facebook pages, Twitter accounts, and YouTube channels. Moreover, the forum of the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science, which is considered one of the largest atheist forums online, had a story that revealed a part of the moral decline in the realm of dialogue and criticism among many of its atheist participants. On February 23, 2010, many subscribers were surprised to find themselves unable to access the forum. A decision had been made to increase censorship of written content due to the abundance of obscenities, insults, and profanity that had filled the forum. Many blogs at the time criticized this decision in scathing language, and even Dawkins himself was not immune to some of the attacks. One person wrote of him, "He is pus present in the posterior of a trapped mouse within a dead ferret's armpit." The Telegraph newspaper revealed some of the details regarding the closure of this forum and the reactions it triggered. However, the story doesn't end there. It's worth mentioning that the person who was managing the website was Josh Timonen. Despite being closely associated with Richard Dawkins, in October 2010, Dawkins filed a lawsuit against Josh, accusing him of defrauding him by stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars. This allegedly occurred through the sale of some atheistic items and Dawkins memorabilia via the website. Josh defended himself, considering Dawkins' actions a major betrayal and unsubstantiated accusations. The Independent newspaper published the story's details. Returning to the hostile language used by some atheists to convey their atheistic ideas. One atheist commented on the famous debate between Dawkins and John Lennox in America in 2007. Why is everyone surprised that these debates always end the same way? Why? Why do we expect anything better from the religious? I'm beginning to think that the best thing we can do is just yell in their faces. You're idiots, you're fools, you're morons. As for the offensive insults and vulgar language, it's something that's challenging to convey here. However, I can mention some book titles that express such degradation, apologizing for the explicitness of these titles due to their extreme ugliness and offensiveness. I mention them only to illustrate the audacity displayed by some individuals. When we talk about indecency in conducting dialogue, examples are indeed present, and it's not just an unfounded accusation. As for the insults from anonymous accounts and pseudonyms, they are beyond description. Continuing with the issue of mockery and ridicule of religions, there are atheist comedians who play a significant role in this arena, such as Bill Maher, the host of the famous show, Real Time with Bill Maher. Many episodes of his show include criticism of religions and often a mocking tone, especially towards Islam. His show frequently features appearances by prominent figures of the new atheism movement. Additionally, he has produced a documentary satirizing religious beliefs titled Religulous. Another comedian who humorously promotes atheism is George Carlin, known for his sharp and satirical take on religion. He presents a variety of comedic performances that include biting satire of both religion and religious individuals alike. There is some controversy within the atheist community regarding the best approach to promote atheism. Should it be through empathy and conciliation, or through insult and provocation? Richard Dawkins discussed this issue in a lecture titled The Militant Atheist, which he delivered on the TED platform. He mentioned that the term atheism carries a negative connotation that hinders the societal acceptance of atheists. Dawkins went on to discuss some alternative terms, such as skeptic, humanist, naturalist, and non-religious. However, he expressed the view that it is necessary to retain the term atheist for the same reason it is examined for alternatives. As atheism is considered a societal taboo, and mentioning it often creates a sense of provocation, drawing attention to the phenomenon and stimulating debate about it, which can positively contribute to its spread. This issue was also discussed in a conversation with Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss regarding their recent film, Unbelievers. It is evident that there is a growing trend within atheist circles that adopts this provocative approach, and relies heavily on ridicule and mockery as a technique for promoting atheism. Some individuals within the atheist community, while displaying a degree of gentleness and kindness in their atheist discourse, have adopted a more confrontational tone. For instance, the atheist blogger Hemant Mehta, author of The Young Atheist Survival Guide, who named his blog The Friendly Atheist, has also expressed understanding for the aggressiveness in the new atheist discourse against religion. Even he, at times, has shifted towards a more assertive form of atheism. To illustrate the transition to this brazen atheism, consider this real-life scenario. In one American university, when Christian students were gifting non-Christians with the Holy Bible, atheists responded by gifting them fictional novels to convey the message that their Bible is merely a book of fantasies. The situation escalated further when atheists began countering with gifts of explicit sexual content, referencing some of the sexual stories found in the Bible. It is clear that there is a distinction in the nature of these responses. Naturally, such aggressive practices by new atheists are not universally accepted or endorsed by all atheists. There are individuals who criticize these practices, considering them lacking in objectivity and professionalism, and potentially harmful to the atheist discourse itself. Even Richard Dawkins himself acknowledged this when he said in his book, The God Delusion, "Regardless of my dislike of wrestling contests, I seem somehow to have acquired a reputation for pugnacity toward religion. Colleagues who agree that there is no God and that we do not need religion to be moral, and even though we can explain the origins of religion and ethics in a non-religious manner, they often engage me with polite but puzzled questions. Why are you so aggressively? What is truly wrong with religion? Is it the source of this much harm, which obliges us to be active in combating it? Why don't you live and let others live as well?" Therefore, recognizing the hostile nature of the new atheist discourse is something even some atheists themselves observe, and some of them even offer harsh criticism of it. Among the atheists who have criticized this excessive hostility towards religion and religious individuals is Professor of Communications, Matthew Nesbitt. In an article titled, Two Faces of Atheism, he remarks, "Atheists have a big problem in their collective public image. When people ask me about my beliefs, I often respond with a smile, I'm an atheist, but I'm a nice atheist. Atheists have long suffered from an unfair stereotype in the media and popular culture, but we have some outspoken individuals who harm our overall image. They are usually characterized by anger, lack of charisma, and a fervent desire to ridicule the religious. Any atheist who disagrees with their mocking rhetoric is often labeled as a compromiser. These new atheists are the dark underbelly of atheism. In their books, blogs, and statements, they promote an ideologically permissive agenda, often using immature and offensive language. This behavior fosters the negative aspects within us and perpetuates the unfair stereotype we hold about others, such as religious individuals." Furthermore, Noam Chomsky, the renowned linguistics professor, describes Hitchens and Harris as simply religious fanatics. And among those who have criticized the new atheists is the atheist physicist Peter Higgs, the Nobel Prize winner and discoverer of the Higgs boson, often referred to as the God particle. He also criticized Dawkins, saying, "Dawkins is, in some way, almost a fanatic, but of a different kind." He expressed his frustration with Dawkins' stance towards religious people and stated that he agrees with those who find Dawkins' approach embarrassing. The prominent atheist Darwinian criticized the outspoken atheism as well. Michael Ruse, in a letter to Daniel Dennett, he stated, "I think that you and Richard Dawkins are a disaster in the fight against intelligent design. We are losing the battle. What we need is not atheism representing an unpredictable reaction, but rather a measure of seriousness in dealing with various subjects. It appears that you lack the will to earnestly study Christianity, engage in a meaningful discourse with those ideas, and, most notably, it is not only absurd but also unethical to claim that Christianity represents a force of evil, as Richard asserts. Furthermore, in times of conflict, we require allies in battles, not the extermination of all well-intentioned individuals." Michael Ross also confirms the lack of seriousness among the new atheists in understanding the religious stance, comprehending their arguments, and engaging in a genuine discourse with them. He articulates a biting critique of the shallowness of the book, the God delusion, and the New Atheism movement, saying, "Unlike the New Atheists, I take the matter of knowledge seriously. I have written that the God delusion made me feel ashamed of being an atheist, and I meant it. For example, Christians believe that the existence of God is necessary, and does not require a reason for his existence. I have made a significant effort to try to understand what this means. As for Dawkins and his ilk, they are ignorant in these matters, and they disparage those who attempt to understand them." He reiterated such sentiments in one of his video interviews, and even stated in one of his conversations, "I have written elsewhere that the God delusion makes me feel ashamed of being an atheist. Let me reiterate it, and let me say that I am proud to be a target of criticism by the New Atheists. They are a genuine catastrophe." Among those who have also criticized this extreme form of atheism is the philosopher Paul Kurtz, who was dubbed the father of humanistic secularism in America. Kurtz remarks, "Angry atheism serves no purpose." He further expressed in an article titled, "The True Unbeliever." Militant atheism often appears dogmatic and narrow-minded, unconcerned with the human values that should accompany a rejection of religion. In my view, the New Atheists have made a valuable contribution to contemporary culture by subjecting religious claims to scrutiny in the public sphere. My objection lies with the militant atheists, who seem intolerant of religious believers, completely dismissive of agnostics, skeptics, and those indifferent to religion, labeling them as cowardly. The journalist Tom Scherf wrote an article in the Telegraph titled, "Please, Richard, Embrace Silence." He began by stating, "I truly do not wish to write this piece. For a long time, I held Richard Dawkins in high regard, and I somehow wish I had never started following him on Twitter, as it taints all the beautiful memories of the blind watchmaker." The atheist philosopher Thomas Nagel states, "One of Dawkins' objectives is to abolish the tradition of showing respect towards religion, a practice considered part of contemporary civility. He does this by continually violating this convention, being as derogatory as he can be, and pointing with anger and delight at religious beliefs or practices that appear absurd or destructive." Alistair McGrath conveys in his book, The Dawkins Delusion, a statement from one of his fellow academic atheists. "Do not judge faith by this puerile intellectual charade." Jerry Wolff, who is regarded as one of the pioneers of labeling this phenomenon as New Atheism, and himself identifies as an agnostic, remarks, "My friends, today I must pose a crucial question to you. Where do you stand on the question of God's existence? It may be a question you would prefer not to entertain, but I fear I have no choice but to present it to you. Each of us must make a commitment. It is time to declare our positions. This is the challenge posed by the New Atheists. They will not let us off simply because we are not believers. They do not merely question belief in God, but the very idea of respecting such belief." The atheist philosopher Julian Baggini penned an article titled, "The New Atheist Movement is Destructive," in which he critiqued the phenomenon of New Atheism for several reasons, including the observation that New Atheists define themselves primarily through their aggressive attacks on religion, which often overshadows their own self-defined beliefs. He noted that they seem to require an enemy to establish their self-identities. In any case, the reaction of some atheists to such criticism has been extremely harsh. He mentioned in his blog, I have been vilified as a heretic through the comments of many, and I have been described in various ways, such as a parasite, a fool, and an empty bag of air. So, if this is the nature of discourse among some fellow atheists who do not share their excessive hostility towards religion, one can only imagine their rhetoric towards religious individuals. Dear respected follower, the preceding was nothing more than a clever reference by the author to a brief glimpse into the subtleties of God's plan, and how God impelled atheists to undermine themselves. As the new atheists adopted a brash language and a hostile style that caused many to reject them and criticize one another. On the other hand, it is unfortunate that some believers, whether deliberately or not, use the same style in discussing and criticizing non-believers. Therefore, the call to God must be made wisely, with wisdom and good preaching. We must not forget God's commandment to His noble prophet. And by the mercy of Allah, you dealt with them gently, and had you been severe and harsh-hearted, they would have broken away from about you.